So picture this. It's Saturday morning and you finally decided today is the day you're gonna teach your kid to read. You've got your whiteboard, you've got your marker, your eraser, your flashcards. You are prepped and ready to go. Your kid even seems like they wanna learn too. But when you sit down to teach the lesson, it becomes clear that your kid wants to do anything but listen to you. Immediately, they tell you no. They grab the materials, they push them away. They run away from the lesson and they say, I am not doing it, and you have no idea what to do. Your kid's now upset, and so are you, because you can't figure out why your kid hates learning so much when it's something kids are supposed to naturally love doing. And I know firsthand just how frustrating this is, and I want you to know right now, you are not alone. This is something almost every parent of a young child deals with at some point in time. And fortunately, there's 5 super simple steps you can take to help your child not only stop hating learning time, but start loving it. So if you can relate to any of these learning time struggles, these 5 tips are gonna help you move past those. And for tip number 1, we're gonna head outside. Okay, for tip number 1, you've gotta find a game or an activity that your kid likes. I see far too many people who are trying to teach their kid to read by having them sit down and sit still and just recite letter after letter after letter, which is why a lot of the times I get kids outside, I get them moving, I try to engage them in order to do the lesson. I was working with a child out here a couple of weeks ago, and we tried working inside the house. It didn't work. I got the rocket ship that works for all the other kids. I had this little game where he would hit it with his hand, but it just wasn't clicking for him. So I decided to get him up, out, and moving. And if your kid hates learning time, it might just be that they're not moving and engaging enough, okay? So here's what I did. I took 3 letters like this, I've just got one here, and I taped them up, and I put them on different parts of this fence. Put them down at a level he could reach. Nothing fancy. I put one here, one there. I gave him a fly swatter, set him back there, and I just said, find the sound that says, ah, go hit it. And he ran and he hit that sound. I said, find the sound that says, t, and he ran and he found that sound. You don't need a bunch of materials. You don't need a bunch of stuff. The only limit here is your creativity. So start this off by finding an activity your kid already likes, a game, anything. It can be hide and seek. It can be a scavenger hunt. It can be hopscotch, jumping, running, dancing. It doesn't matter. Think of what your kid likes now. Get them up, get them out, get them moving. And I promise you, they're going to go from hating to loving learning time in no time. Now, this is probably the single biggest mistake that most parents make because they get tip number 1 down perfect. They've got the perfect activity, it's engaging, it's fun, it's hands-on, and they assume that's all they need to do. So when they start the activity, inevitably, it goes south. It doesn't work because the parent has not taken tip number 2 and they haven't set a clear routine. You can have the most fun thing in the world, but if it catches your kid off guard, they're not gonna wanna do it. If that thing pops up during this other block they already know is coming, they're not gonna wanna do it. There's lots of things that come up during the day that would be great for me. Friends who reach out, who text me, who want to meet up, but it's not in my schedule. It's not in my calendar. It's not part of my routine. So I say no. No, thank you. I hadn't planned for that. And our kids are the same way. If we've got this amazing lesson in this game and we spent all this time thinking of it and we just go down to the room and bombard them with this brand new thing, they're not going to want to do it because they weren't planning for it. To have a consistent routine, it means you tell your child, at this time, we're doing this. We're doing this today, we're doing it tomorrow, we're doing it the next day. 10 minutes before the lesson, tell them again. In 10 minutes, we're doing this. That helps your child expect it. Because no matter how fun your thing is, if they're not ready for that thing, they're never gonna wanna actually do it. So make sure you plan a consistent routine. Same time, same place, same energy, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you're gonna have a much more likely chance for your child to be successful and enjoy your learning time. Once you've made your lesson fun and engaging, you've got your kid moving around and having fun, but you don't stop there. You build it in as part of a consistent routine. So it's happening at the same time, in the same place, every single day. There's still another really important step that we've got to have down, which is we need to teach well. We need to actually make our lesson super, super clear so our kids understand. And I know you're like, Spence, Obviously, we need to teach well, but how many of us actually do this? We go in a lesson and we kind of think about how we learned something as a kid, and that's what we do. Or we go in a lesson and all we do is we focus on the game and the activity, but we never focus on what we're actually doing to help them understand. What you're gonna find if your teaching is not good, day 1 probably goes well. Day 2 probably goes well. Day 3 starts to get a little bit worse because they're not understanding. Day 4, they're not understanding. Day 5, they've done the same thing 5 days in a row and they still don't get it. Your lesson is gonna go south quickly. You've gotta be able to teach these things well. And I'll give you a really concrete example because I see a lot of parents who are teaching their kids all 26 letters at the same time, or they're singing the alphabet song over and over and over again, and they're getting frustrated that the kid isn't learning. Well, guess what? Your kid's frustrated too. Part of why they hate learning is because they don't feel successful. So you've got to get your kid wins so they want to keep getting wins. If you go 3 days without your kid learning a letter sound, you're doing it wrong and they're gonna quit. If you go a week without your kid learning their first 3 letter sounds, you're doing it wrong and they're gonna quit. What you've got to do, and I've got hundreds of videos on this, hundreds of videos, so do your research, is you've got to present just a couple sounds to your kid at a time. Focus on 2 or 3 sounds like p, n, and that's it. Just focus on these and help your kid learn them and get the wins. Don't do a lot of extra explaining and justifying and thinking of random words to connect it to. Just tell your kids these 3 sounds, have them play games with it, and you're done. Eventually, once they know those sounds, all you've got to do is start putting sounds together into words, right? Start with 2 sounds. N. Help them stretch it. Once they can do 2, do 3. P, n, pen. Once they can do 3, do 4. The words can be real or made up. It doesn't matter. Just slowly begin to build. Once you know the stages of reading, you can teach really, really well so your kid knows every time I work with dad, every time I work with mom, I'm going to learn something. And I don't want you to underestimate how powerful that is. This really, really matters. Learning for kids is not just about having fun. It's not just about having a routine. It's about being able to go into the lesson and say, if they show me this, I am smart enough, I am competent enough, I am capable enough to learn that thing. That only comes from really, really good instruction. Okay, for tip number 4, we're gonna get super, super honest. I want you to reflect on yourself as a parent, and I want you to be a little bit vulnerable here because if you can't be honest with yourself, we're never gonna make the change our kid needs, okay? So between me and you, we gotta come in, we gotta be honest with tip number 4, and the question I want you to ask is, if your kid hates learning time, if they say no, if they refuse, if they kick and they scream and they run away from the situation, is it just the learning time? Is it just reading? Or if you're honest with yourself, do you see that at other points in the day too? Is that a pattern in their behavior when you ask them to do something they don't want to do? This is something that's very important. And I'll show you a quick little diagram. This is your learning time. Call it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you do. It's a very, very small point in the day, right? This is the other 24 hours in the day. It's really, really big. And we've been doing this 24 hours for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years in a row, right? Tens of thousands of hours. And if in all this time, we never learn to accept no, we never learn to do something that we don't want to do. We never learn to listen to our parents when they tell us something. If we've never built those skills in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of full days, how in the world could your kid possibly do it in this 5 minutes of your reading lesson? Far too often parents say, oh, my kid hates reading. They say no, they complain, they throw a fit. It's reading. It's not. It's just the first time you've ever tried to hold your kid to an expectation. You've never tried before. You told them to finish their dinner, they didn't, and you left. You told them to go to their room, they didn't, and you stopped. You told them 10 times to leave the playground, and you didn't, so you stayed. And now you're telling them to sit down and do the sounds, and they're telling you no, and you're surprised? You can't be. Your kid has never practiced the skill of following directions. Your kid has never learned how to accept no and move on. Your kid hasn't practiced doing something they genuinely don't want to do long enough to realize they do want to do it. These are skills we teach. And I share this with no judgment. I've been a kindergarten teacher. I know what it's like to mess up with kids' behavior. I've been a toddler parent. I know what it's like to mess up with kids' behavior. I get it. I'm just calling it like it is. If your kid struggles with the behavior during reading time, and you've made the lesson fun and engaging, you've made a consistent routine, you've got really good instruction, and they're still not doing it, the problem might be those other 23 hours and 55 minutes in your day that they're also not doing those things. So if we can fix this and look at it holistically, we're gonna have a much better shot at fixing that little bit of reading time in the middle. And finally, if your kid hates learning time, and you do too, guess what? It might be the screens. Now, I say this with all the love and all the understanding in the world. I know how hard it is to pull your kid off of screen time, but I just want you to think about this for a moment and be honest with yourself. This one was created by me and a couple people I work with, okay? I think we did a great job. We drew the pictures and we wrote the words and we did our best. But this one was created by people who make billions of dollars creating technology, apps, games, and products designed exclusively to capture your child's attention. Their only goal is to keep your kid watching this. And every time your kid misbehaves, every time they're bored, every time they refuse to do learning, you put them on it again. You give them exactly what they're looking for, and their brain says, yes, 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 I got it. And when you give them this, the brain says, I'd rather not. Now, I get it. You as the parent can choose how much screen time you give your child, but I can't lie to you. All research shows that screens are bad for kids. Screens are bad for adults. The amount of time I spend every day looking at my phone because it's my job to post content, it's not healthy. I track the number of minutes per day and my mood, and the more time I spend on screens, the less happy I am. It's the same for you, and it's even more so for your kid. Screens are not good for their brain. So when your kid is weighing, do I want to play with my tablet or do I want to read a book? Tablet wins every single time, especially if they get a lot of it. Furthermore, when they're sitting down to focus and they decide, I am going to read the book, I am going to look at the flashcards, I am going to engage, their brain is not used to focusing because these TV shows switch every 1 to 2 seconds to keep their interest. These apps and games are designed to move quickly, and you're asking them to sit and to focus and to look and to concentrate. Their brain is not programmed to do it. There is strong evidence showing that the more time your child spends on screens, the more their brain begins to mimic someone with ADHD. You are decreasing their attention, their focus, and their interest because a book will never ever compare to a screen that lights up and dances and moves and plays music. It never will. So for this point, I just want you to be very, very honest. If your kid hates learning time and you've done the other 4, this might be the one thing you're scared to do, the one thing you're afraid to do because they're gonna melt down, they're gonna complain, they're gonna scream, it's gonna be bad. And I'll be honest, it will for 7 days. After that, they'll forget it exists. Guarantee you, take it, put it on the shelf, no screen time for 7 days, your kid will forget it exists and your lessons will change right away. It will be a completely different child in front of you and they'll love learning and you'll love teaching them. That's gonna be one of the biggest wins you ever have as a parent. So parents, here's your homework. Number 1, build in fun, activities, movement, find out what your kid likes and build that into the learning time. Number 2, don't stop there. Put this as part of a consistent routine that we do every single day at the same time in the same place. Once we've got that, we've got to teach well. Don't just do the stuff that you did when you were a kid. Take some time to learn how to teach reading so that your kid can feel progress and wins from day to day. Next, take an honest look at your kid's behavior across the board because some of that may be bleeding into your learning time. And finally, I want you to seriously consider the amount of time that your child is spending on screens. And if their focus, attention, and interest is an issue, just pull back on those screens a little bit. I know this is a lot of information, but I promise the work is worth the reward. And if you really want to dive into this further, I think that teaching part is really, really important. And this is what I do. I'm putting up one of my favorite videos on the screen now. This is the easiest way to teach any child to read. So if you really want to get started with your little one, I'd encourage you to watch this video, jump in, and get started. And as always, your kid can do this. You can too, and I'll be here to support you every step of the way.